Hey, everybody, this is Pastor Mike with Christ Agape Collective, and I'm here today with my friend Chad Bourquin, a big-time grain company. Chad, how you doing today?
Good, Mike. Thanks for
Good.
having me on again.
Well, it's been a while, and sorry it took so long to get back, but we started a discussion a couple months ago on upper limit problems, wasn't it?
hmm
And how we were all coping with the quarantine at the time. But here we are in the end of August, and COVID is still a very real thing, and it's definitely changed the way you're doing business, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Just kind of update me on where we've come from the quarantine and where you were spiritually, emotionally, and
hmm
where you are now. Are there any highlights or anything major that's happened?
Yeah, I mean, from just a situational point of view, things have not changed dramatically in live music. There's been a little bit of release. We've played a couple of shows, and so that's as we talked about earlier, that's been fun just to be able to do that again. You kind of forget how much you love something um,
Absolutely.
until you get to do it again. Um, but just I just feel really grateful that I made a decision to start really paying attention to what I did every morning and how I start every day and all those things that we've talked about in the past before all this hit,
Yeah.
because it played into how I was able to basically to respond and not react. I mean, I
Hmm.
think that's a big problem is when if you're not in a good place mentally and spiritually, then the tendency is to react rather than respond.
Hmm.
Um, and there's subtle, what seems like subtle differences between those words is it's actually pretty major. Reacting is normally something you do out of just you're not normally in a good place when you react. Example is you're walking through the hallway and your wife says something that doesn't quite set well with you, and you respond or react in a way that puts you in the doghouse for you know
Right.
an indefinite amount of time. That's reacting.
Yeah.
Responding is saying, um, I need to maybe think about where she was coming from on that and why she did that,
Hmm.
and what role did I play into maybe her feeling that way. I mean, that's just
Hmm.
a small example, but that crosses over to what we do in our work and our how we deal with other people.
Hmm.
Not to take it personal. It's funny, I was in this COVID scanner project I'm working on. I was helping build a bunch of marketing decks, and one of the guys, and this guy is a former UFC fighter, and it's got all kinds of history, and that's super nice guy, very very passionate and very blunt. And I did this one deck for him on something he was getting ready to send out, and I don't know for sure. I've never even asked this. I don't know if he thought I did not like write the content on there, because when we got on the phone, he was so open about how he felt about it. It was like, he goes, "Oh man, this is bad. This is all this is horrible. I mean, we cannot send this out this way. This is, I mean, he went on for like 3 minutes about how bad this deck was." And I was laughing. I was actually laughing out loud,
Uh-huh.
just like hearing this, thinking like, this is funny, because I just got done getting complimented on the same deck from somebody else previous to this,
Yeah.
but it's difference of opinion. But instead, I was like, there was an instance of me being offended by that because of how blunt he was being.
Hmm.
I mean, I thought about that for a second, and I thought, no, wait a minute, this is an opportunity to learn how to do this better, because he obviously has seen things in this that I am not seeing, and I want to get better at everything I do,
Hmm.
and so I just waited it out, and then we started going through it, and he started walking through what he thought he needed to be better, and it completely made sense, and I completely understood why he said it,
Hmm.
and there was never an issue, you know um, of something that could have been an issue and probably would have been an issue at some point in my life. Um, Well, would have been. I
Yeah.
used to get offended easily. So, but I have to sit there and think, why am I able to do that now when I wasn't before? And it's because of daily intentional living,
Mhm.
daily intentional starts. I mean, that's the biggest part. How do I start it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, every day, I at least I can't remember when I started doing this, but when I know when I started the Wim Hof thing, and I realized how much that was helping me listen during that process, through breathing. I started recognizing that like, because after I get done with that, I would go create a post on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and I started recognizing that I was coming up with these posts in about 10 to 15 minutes every day. And I started also recognizing that I had no idea what I was going to post before that point normally.
Mhm.
And I started recognizing that I'm at will able to stop any thoughts and just let that come in and know that God has given me something directly to post.
Amen. Well,
And go ahead.
yeah, I'm going to back up because you're talking about that process of daily being quiet, connecting with connecting your spirit with God's spirit, and you were just telling a story of responding versus reacting,
Hmm.
and that when you react, you're reacting basically out of selfishness, conceitedness, pride, things that are going to cause you to react, and they generally always have bad outcomes. Whereas you're responding now out of a place of what we like to call contemplation. You're out of contemplation. You're responding, and it's bearing good fruit in your life. And what I think we're all facing in this COVID year is we're being recreated to some extent. And in your case, it's drastic. You're being recreated in major ways. Our ministry, our church has been re recreated. Um, Speak to that a little bit, how this process of contemplation through COVID has allowed you to respond and be recreated in new ways, and not just limited you to reacting and maybe staying the same to your detriment. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think one of the first things to recognize is that there is always opportunity out there in everything, in many, many different areas. And that it's not, well, I mean, I was going to say it's not circumstance based, but it actually is circumstance based.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's what is it? Ecclesiastics talks about, there's a time to live, a time to die, a time, all those different things. I mean, that whole, verse there, um, makes a lot more sense through a situation like this when you think about, okay, there's a lot of stuff dying right now,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of stuff being born right now too at the
Right.
same time. And whether which side of that we're on is completely up to us,
Yes,
you know.
absolutely.
And the victim mentality is not going to put us on the time to live and the time to be birthed and all that is never going to put you there.
Right.
Victim mentality always leads to death. And because what we're doing is we're not taking responsibility for ourselves, we're not taking responsibility for our actions. And it comes back to exactly what you just said. Reaction is simply a ego based thing.
Mm-hmm.
Our ego has caused us to feel hurt or damaged, or and blaming comes right behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And behind blaming comes actions that lead to death.
Yeah. Well, I'd mentioned before we started recording, but one of the scriptures that I'm going to be talking about this week is Romans 12, and let me just read it to you
Hmm.
and see how, and if you may not even feel like it's applicable to what we're talking about, but I think it might. So in verse 2, he says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." And I'd mentioned we tend to look at that with rose-colored glasses, and we think of doctrine and different things, but
Yeah.
it really speaks to me to what you're saying as far as allowing your allowing your mind and your thinking to be transformed, and don't set it according to the pattern of this world, or the way that the world thinks and does things. And it takes some intention, some daily intention, doesn't it?
Yeah. And what are the patterns of this world right now?
Hmm.
Uh, COVID-19,
Yeah.
all kinds of racial stuff going on, politics. I mean, these are all things that fit into that patterns of the world. And if we conform to those, then we're playing in to be part. We're just as much a part of the problem.
Right. Right.
The solution is not in those areas. The solution is saying, where's the light at? I'm going to head that way.
Right.
And you know, and that's not an easy place to get to if you're just starting. It gets,
Yeah.
because we're talking about years of conditioning of doing things a certain way, and
Right.
probably not the right way.
Well, you had broke down. I had mentioned daily contemplation. You might use the term meditation,
Hmm.
um, but it involves being quiet and listening.
Yeah.
And you broke it down to just basic breath. And I, I think, and jump in and elaborate
Hmm.
on this, but I think you'd mentioned that you've got to start somewhere, and you're not going to be as far down the road as the next guy. But if you start where you're at, it's as simple as your breathing and those techniques of being quiet,
Hmm.
allowing your breath to just settle you down. Um, is that what you're talking about?
It completely is. And I remember starting this process with just you know breathing in, breathing out. Yeah, I'd breathe in 3, breathe out 5, and beating myself up all the way through it, because my mind would keep wandering,
Hmm.
until I started to recognize, is like, wait a minute. Okay, first of all, quit beating myself up over this, because that's not helping anything out. Focus on the breath, but be okay with the mind wandering, because that might just be God giving me a message.
Mm.
And the more I relaxed into that, and the more I just had peace about whatever came on mind, is when I think I was able to just start having this time in the mornings that I used to hear about people communicating back and forth with God. I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about, you know? It's like, I don't hear any of that stuff.
Yeah.
They must, I don't know. Maybe they're smoking something I'm not, but, you
Or
know,
just way more spiritual than I
just
am.
way more spiritual. Yeah. I used to put myself in a hierarchy, and it was low, you know?
Right.
Um, but it's not about that at all. So what it is God is already communicating. It's like God wasn't communicating before. My mind was too busy to really listen
Yeah.
and hear, and then once that starts to happen enough, if I just start responding to what I'm hearing,
Mhm.
sometimes you know, I always get, and it's because I asked for it.
Mm-hmm.
I always get what I'm going to write about that morning for my post. That always comes. And on a side note, I've recognized that I'm actually writing a book because I keep all that.
Mm-hmm.
I keep it all in Trello so I can kind of move them around. But I realized like, oh, I'm gonna have a book here by the time I'm done with all this. Um, that will be my co-author is God on this thing, because it's 15 minutes a day of what I'm getting from him to write, you know.
Yeah,
But
that's awesome.
but then beyond that, there's a lot of times there is a name or two that might pop into my mind related to what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing, whether it be with the music or with this COVID scanner or whatever. There's a name or two that it might pop into my mind. And so I always get up right when I'm right when I get up. I always get up and try to get that written down on a piece of paper as fast as possible. And normally, if I will call, if it's a person that came to my mind or an action, if I
Mm-hmm.
will do either one of those things or call that person, there always seems to be exactly the right time,
Mm.
you know, that I needed to contact them that day. So
Yeah.
I don't sit on that stuff. I do it quickly. And I think there's something that happens there too. I think there's that the faithfulness that comes with that brings on bigger and better things, more opportunity, because now I'm shown that I am totally cool with hearing what God says and going ahead and just getting it done.
Yeah, and I forget the term you used earlier, but you mentioned that throughout this process, you're learning to live in the moment or enjoy the day that you're given. And I wonder how important is that to then take this time of contemplation and listening, and then just allowing the day to unfold as it will, and then you appreciating it and just living in it. How important is that process to the whole recreation?
It's it's extremely important. In fact, it's probably the difference between it being effective and not effective. Because if we're not enjoying the moments and not relaxed and just kind of recognizing where we're at in this specific moment, then we are basically many times we're applying a pressure and shutting off the valve of the flow, or at least tightening it up, slowing it down. You know, I think there's this, the more we can relax into this just allowing state,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And that's part of what working on this project has done for me with this COVID thing, because this is so massive and so big, and there's so many pieces and so many unknowns to the whole thing, that if if I tried to figure any of it out or all of it out, it would shut me down. It would
Mm-hmm.
just it would shut me off. I would feel like I don't know how to even I I don't know how to even handle this,
Mm-hmm.
because but because I'm handling, it's like, no, no, this is, I'm here for a reason, and this is absolutely going to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm somehow, this guitar player out of Kansas ended up in the middle of a situation that's way out of his lane,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm here for a reason. And so the only thing I know to do is like, what is my next step? How do I be faithful with the next step?
Right.
And not worry
Right.
about the results. The results are not up to me. The
So
next step's up to me.
so that being said, Chad 15 years ago presented with this opportunity, what would he have done different to blow it?
Probably would have ignored it first. um, he Chad would not have even recognized it. I imagine.
Wouldn't
But
even
if
a
for
record.
yeah, for some reason, if he did recognize it, yeah, he would have blown it pretty quick. He would have self-sabotaged his
Yeah.
role in it. Um, and he would have found some way to do that subconsciously or consciously or whatever. He just would have done it because that's who he was.
So let me go back to the scripture I read, and this process. number one, you're speaking to something that Dawn and I have been talking about for weeks, and it, I think to the casual listener, it almost sounds oversimplified, but the idea of daily contemplation or daily being quiet and even that practice of breathing, I know to the type A mind out there, they're thinking we're leaving something out. They're like, yeah, but what, but what do you do? Oh, do you have five things you're going to do for you? Are we missing anything, or is it really that simple? And would you go a week without having that time of quiet?
Yeah. Well, first thing to understand is I am a type A mind.
Ah.
So, so I completely relate to that thinking. Like, there's got to be more here,
Yeah.
you know, than this. And there is more, but it doesn't, it only comes by doing this stuff first.
Mhm.
It doesn't, the type A mind, and the personality charts that talk about driver, expressive, analytical, and amiable, I am off the charts originally. I mean, I was off the charts driver
Before you got transformed.
before I got transformed. Any expressiveness that people think I have, or maybe I do have now, was completely learned. I began learning that when I was in AdvoCare, when I had to start figuring out how to train and teach and stuff like that. But it is not my nature. And so my whole goal most of my life is, how do I get from point A to point B as fast as possible? And what are all the things I need to do that? And I really don't care what's going on the side of me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going here to there. And it is not a good way to live, because you miss so much of life doing that.
Yeah.
And so for the type A person, first thing you have to do is, like Bob Newhart says, stop it. Screams it, actually. You remember that one?
No. I'm
Yeah.
Bob Newhart, but not
Yeah, he had this skit where he would just scream, stop it.
that.
I won't do it in your mic, but or in my mic, but and the only way to stop it is to say, okay, I'm not going to start every day on at 100 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start the day opposite of that, which is slow. I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to look at my email. I'm not going to do anything that has the tendency to get me faster than I want to start the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you ask, do I ever miss a week? No, I don't even miss it. The only time I ever miss a day at
Mm-hmm.
this is if I am going to take that day off and sleep in. Like, our anniversary was Sunday.
Right. Oh, happy anniversary.
I didn't wake up till 9:30 Sunday.
Wow.
And at that time, it was time for us to go to brunch and all that. So
Uh-huh.
I didn't do it that day, but it was, I also didn't work at all that day. I didn't do anything stressful that day. So,
Right.
but that's the only time I will ever miss it. And I set my alarm to make sure I get up in time so that I get that done beforehand.
So, and then you'd mentioned that part of that is then to allow and just allow good things then to prove themselves out in your life. And how does that look to the average person?
Well, allowing is a result of relaxing, doing what we're talking about, and learning that the results are not up to us, and that the what is up to us is becoming the best version of us as we can,
Mm-hmm.
and taking the next step, and being present in the next step. And I know there's going to be people listening to this and say, there's got to be more to it than
Yeah,
this.
there's a catch.
There is a catch. And
But no, go ahead.
well, there is more to it than this, but you're not going to get it from me
Right.
or anybody else. You're going to get it from doing this.
Right.
That's how you get what's more.
Right.
I can't give it to you.
And I really feel like one of the underlying benefits of this entire tragedy of COVID this year is that God's just wanting to spend more time with us. Uh,
Yeah.
God's just wanting, you'd mentioned earlier that God never stopped talking. It's just we're finally starting to listen and pay attention. And you're talking about enjoying the present, being in
Hmm.
the moment, and allowing good things to happen, and then responding to negative things. It's not that negative things are going to stop happening. It's just we're not going to react as severely as we used to. And tell us about your little dog and just how your relationship with this little dog has become, I think, an example of this, right? Because you're more patient, you're more loving, you spend more time actually just playing with this little dog. And I want you to tell this story because I actually was inspired by it, because I used to have a dog that annoyed the crap out of me, and it put me in this state of just angst all the time, and I was angry. And well, now I feel horrible guilt about it now that the dog is gone, but it taught me a valuable lesson to actually use this little animal as an opportunity to just be patient, be in the moment, express love. So tell the world about your tiny little dog.
Well, it starts with the dog previous to this one, which was another little dog. And I kind of started learning this lesson when we had that dog, but I didn't, I would have many setbacks.
Mhm.
And so there were times I would be present with that dog and there were times I wouldn't. Well, and then that dog died. And it died after, within 6 weeks, Tammy's dad died. Both my grandparents died.
Wow.
And was oddly enough the same 6 weeks as when we played that Royals deal for 800,000 people. In fact, I found out my grandpa died that day.
Mm.
Um, and went through all that. And then the dog dies. And it wasn't that the dog was more important than any of the others. There wasn't that case, but that was like the final
Yeah, final straw.
final straw. And it just wrecked me. And it's like, um, and it wrecked me because I realized it's like I was not the pet owner I should have been with that dog. And there were times that it just like I ignored that dog, and now that dog was gone, and I didn't have a choice. You
Wow.
know,
There's a spiritual lesson in that statement right there.
yeah. And so it was a while before we got another dog, and I didn't want another dog. I didn't want the. I didn't want the having to do everything you got to do to take care of a dog. I just it's like I had stuff going on, and then one of our friends just said, "I want to give you guys a dog, or I want to give your daughter a dog." That's what it. Yeah, that's what it was. So, and your wife, yeah,
that's
like,
that's a low blow.
and then showed me a picture, and like,
Oh.
I was all over at that point, and but I had a time to do it right this time,
Mhm.
you know, and man, I'm telling you, that dog, and I think any dog can do this. I think they're extremely intuitive. I think they can be a nice barometer, or yeah, barometer. Anyway, a gauge for how you're doing in your life.
Mhm.
If you're present and you're enjoying life, that dog is going to respond to you differently than if you're not,
Yeah.
because they're attracted to that.
Yeah.
And so we can learn so much from that, of just about, are we in the right place?
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think more than dogs, I think people and good things in general are attracted to that disposition, that spiritual state.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, let me read the scripture again and um, see if it has new meaning. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And I think that's what we all want, uh, in life in general is the good and the pleasing and what God ultimately wants for us, our happiness, our best, a relationship. So we kind of take a look back at the COVID year with a little different perspective, and perhaps it's exactly what we needed to reshift our thinking, reshift our priorities, to start transforming us as people, getting us into a position to where we're actually enjoying the little things that we have in this life, and not always just seeking um, money, notoriety. I think a lot of our values have changed at the root. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and if there's one overarching thing that God has done in this thing is He's removed a lot of noise for a lot of people.
Mm, yeah,
Now it's only the ones that have allowed Him to do that,
yeah,
because there's increased noise for the ones that haven't.
right.
I mean, there's probably more noise than ever. But if you get rid of the noise, now we're in a position to hear Him.
Mm,
And if we can hear Him, then the only thing we have to do beyond hearing is be faithful with what He's telling us.
mm,
And what that will do for somebody's life,
mm.
man, it's just there's there's no way I would ever want to go back.
Yeah. Amen. Well, that being said, if you're watching this and you'd like more information, um, hit me up on the church website. It's www.cacnaz.net. Uh, if you have questions, Chad is on LinkedIn. You can look up Chad Bourquin, right?
Yep.
And connect with him. He's got a lot of good stuff to say. Hopefully, we can continue this conversation because I think it's vitally important, and I think it's exactly what uh, people are needing to discover right now, don't you?
Yep, I do. And man, Mike, I want to honor you for just continuing to put this message out there. This
Thank
is
you.
so needed right now.
I agree. Thank you. I appreciate that, and hopefully we can do it some more. And it's been kind of fun for me to explore new mediums. Being able to have conversations with you on Zoom, and doing live services on Sunday with Dawn, and just kind of reaching out and utilizing the internet and technology. So um, we'll continue to listen and seek God, and I pray for you. And I'm excited to see this new project and hear more about it. So, Chad, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Mike.
All
Appreciate
right,
it.
all right. Have a great day.